Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome. We are going to get started in a sec. I know there are a lot of people. I think, Leah, we keep on saying this. There are more people registered for this. What's the plan than ever before?
Another record-breaking registration.
And Bill in Boston wins. He knows the plan, which is you start out by telling us where you're from, where you're calling in from. We are in an unusual place. We are rural Virginia now with Leah's folks on a little vacation, which means this is a particularly exciting What's the Plan because our children are not in school now, and possibly at some point a 4-year-old and or a 2-year-old will come bursting through the door and have a lot of fun.
And if that happens, we're gonna be cool. We're gonna keep rolling. Just give us a little grace while we remove the child.
Indeed. The rule is whoever's answering a question is on point to finish answering the question. The other person runs and gets the child.
Yep.
Tag teaming. Okay, so we've got people from all over. Myersville, Maryland, a couple of people from Maryland, Victoria, Texas, Long Lake, New York. Leah,
San
call out.
Pedro,
Yeah.
California. Oh, Indivisible Whidbey Island, Libertyville, New York City, Springfield, Roslyn, Manhattan, North Shore Indivisible near Boston, New Salem, Massachusetts, Forest Grove, Oregon. Oh, I see several Georgia folks going by really fast. Okay. Something Farmington. Oh, it's going too fast. Some Utah.
It's going exactly as fast as it needs to be
It's going
going.
so fast.
To give a sense of everybody that we're all over. 98% of I think all but three congressional districts in the country now have indivisible groups, Leah.
That's
We're making our way.
And if you're in any of those last three, let us know. We're ready. We're ready for you. All right. Let's see. Shall we go ahead and get started, Ezra?
Yeah, let's get started. Welcome to the final August What's the Plan, everybody? I am one of your hosts, Ezra, and this is, and we don't say this. We did a new group leader meeting last month, and we said halfway through an hour-long meeting something about us being married, and somebody said, "You're married?" And so we kind of got out of the habit of saying, "Yes, indeed, we are. We are indeed married."
Vacation together. That would be really weird.
So if you're brand new here, welcome. We are not the leaders of the Indivisible movement. You are seeing many of the leaders of the Indivisible movement all over the country in the chat box right now. This is a movement led from the bottom up. There are indivisible groups who are leading in just about every community in this country. And the reason why there are so many indivisible groups is because this is how we build power. This is how we wield power. This is how we push institutions and leaders to actually fight for our democracy. That's the theory. This is why we are all forming indivisible groups. This space is a place for us to build and talk and commiserate and plan and strategize. That's why we're here together. But we like to celebrate the beating heart of this movement, which are the indivisible groups. And every week I'm like, maybe this is the week that there aren't going to be a lot of indivisible groups because there are so many now, and probably there aren't more people joining and forming groups. And every week I come here and say, gosh, we're on fire still, y'all. We are on fire. There are a ton of groups forming. There are a ton of groups starting. And Leah always tells me I can't spend a lot of time on this because we got so many questions. And she is absolutely right.
Yeah.
You were right. So please give some love in the chat. Give some love with your emojis. Some brand new indivisible leaders. I'm going to blast through a selection of the 30 or 40, I believe, that started in the last week. But we've got Megan from Mesa Valley Indivisible in Mesa, Arizona. We've got Nora with Gualala Indivisible in Gualala, California. Evelyn, Greater New Haven Indivisible, Connecticut. Great pizza there. St. Elmo, Illinois, Indivisible Kaskaskia, which is south of St. Louis. That's Elise. Welcome, new Indivisible leader, Elise. Laura, Indivisible Calvert County, Maryland, which is right outside DC, that's Indivisible Calvert County, next to another new Indivisible group, Indivisible Charles County, Maryland, nearby, different county, also Maryland, also near DC. So that's Laura and Shelley. Welcome, new group leaders near DC. We need more folks organizing in DC, given the occupation. Rosanna with Blue Valley Indivisible in Beatrice, Nebraska. Ralph, Indivisible Ellenville. I did a Wikipedia deep dive. That's named for a girl named Ellen. In New York. Joan Westbrook Indivisible in Beaverton, Oregon. Jesse Snoqualmie Valley Indivisible, Snoqualmie, which is North Bend, Snoqualmie, and Fall City in Washington. This is east of Seattle. Sherry, Indivisible Middleton, West Madison, and Middleton, Wisconsin. And Abigail, Voices of Upshur, Indivisible Buchanan, West Virginia. That's the last on the list, Leah. I got through fast enough. Okay. Welcome, 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 new leaders. You are, as I've said, the beating heart of this movement. The way we build power for our democracy is organizing our community. That's how we do it. And this is not on all of this is on all of us. It's not on any one of us. We all do our part. Red states, blue states, purple states, rural areas, suburban areas, urban areas. There's some possibility, there's some leverage that you have based on where you are. That's why you're in an indivisible group. So hope everybody on this call, if you're not yet part of one, you're finding one nearby and building the power there. Okay, Leah, why are we here though? Do you want to talk a little bit about these calls?
We're here for our weekly What's the Plan, where we wrestle with what is happening in the news and what are our best strategies to fight back. This is going to be mostly Q&A, mostly live, some submitted from Invisible leaders in advance. If you've got a question, put it in the Q&A box on the lower sort of tab on your screen.
Can't hear Leah.
Oh, and people can't hear me. Okay, if you've got a question, put it in the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. If you want to upvote, we're going to be taking questions that are the most upvoted, so you can vote with your little thumbs up icon for the ones that you want to see us answer. And then we're going to also alternate some that were submitted in advance. If you are from an Indivisible group, please put that in your question. We love to make sure that we are answering questions from folks who are actively organizing with the movement. This will be recorded. It will be sent out to everyone who registered. We're going to post links in the chat. All of those links are going to go out in the follow-up email. So if you miss something because the chat is moving fast, do not panic. It will be coming to your inbox. Oh, and finally, a note on respect. So we cover a lot of stuff in these conversations. It can be hard. We talk to people about stuff that's really personal and really close to all of our hearts. We ask that folks try to keep the chat box constructive and supportive. These are difficult times, and the only way we are going to get through it is if we hold each other up as we organize, even when we disagree about strategy, even when we disagree about tactics, even when we disagree about policy. That's how we're gonna roll.
That's right. Some people are saying they are not getting the post follow-up emails. I've heard that from a couple of folks, and the message that we've got is there are two solutions to this. One is you should go and look in your spam folder. Sometimes Google will label these as spam, and then they'll go to spam, and then that's actually bad because it makes it more difficult for us to deliver email. So it'd be great, check your spam folder for these follow-ups. We do surveys, about 50 to 75% of the time we'll do surveys that we then actually use for strategic and tactical decision making. That the other possibility is at some point there was an unsubscribe button clicked, and if that was the case, then you're off the email. We can put in the chat the best way to follow up. I'm seeing Ezra, you look tired. We are having some baby sleeping through the night problems right now, y'all. I'm not gonna lie.
Baby, we mean 2-year-old.
Yeah, she's not even a baby anymore, but she's really never really cracked that nut of sleeping through the night. So yes, that this is the real me. This is what I look like now. So if you're not receiving the emails, please check your spam. If not, I would recommend we'll put in the chat how you can get through to us so you can get back added to the list. It's actually not as simple as just signing up again if you've click the unsubscribe button at some point. So we'll get you in the chat. We do want your input here. And that's actually a nice transition directly into the last survey. So last week, we put in a survey asking about what is the big motivating issue that you think will bring more people into No Kings 2. We're not announcing No Kings 2 on this call. Stay tuned next week. We will have more to talk about. But we are preparing with coalition partners to announce the next big national mobilization. And so we are asking you all about what is the motivating feature. And this confirms something that we have suspected in the direction that we have been going, which is, we asked about Trump's secret police, we asked about Medicaid, we asked about militarization of cities, we asked about gerrymandering in red states. Overall, with about 1,000 responses that we read through, the picture that we've got is the most motivating cause behind No Kings in your community is the authoritarian frame. This is especially the secret police, the terrorizing of immigrant communities, the militarization of cities. That's not to say that people don't care about economics, they don't care about jobs, they don't care about inflation, they don't care about Medicaid. That features, but I'd say it's the second argument, not the first argument. And I do think one of the benefits of the two biggest mobilizations that we've done, hands off and No Kings, is they're intentionally big umbrellas. They're intentionally big tent. They allow a lot of people to come for whatever particular reason is driving them. But this does influence our overall orientation of this is us fighting for democracy against authoritarian overreach. That is a big reason why a lot of us are coming out right now. It's certainly the big motivating feature for me. Leah, any other thoughts on the last survey before we move on to
No,
this
keep
week?
moving.
So just a reminder, one of the pieces of feedback, helpful pieces of feedback, helpful constructive criticism that we got in a previous survey was stop spending so damn long on these monologues leading into the Q&A, just cover kind of the action items. And we're trying to follow that. So with that, I'm going to shut up and Leah's going to cover some of the key action items for this week before we go into questions.
All right, first, great. Okay, I'm just going to kick off with a re-up of an exciting call that is coming up that might be of interest to folks who are group leaders with groups that are working on mutual aid, on community response, on community protection. I know there are a lot of people in our network who are either thinking about how do they support folks who are protecting our immigrant rights groups, how do they work directly to fill some of the gaps and fill some of the critical needs that are being left by the slashing of the federal budget and federal support programs, who are thinking in all kinds of ways about how do you partner with local community groups. That has been the goal and the orientation of our Solidarity in Action training series. And we're super excited that we have just launched a grant program specifically to facilitate Indivisible's doing mutual aid, community response, community support programs around the country, either yourselves or in partnership with other organizations. If you're someone who is interested in thinking, maybe I could use a grant for work that we're already doing, or this is the kind of work that I'd like to be doing more of, and I'd like to know how to get started and maybe get some support for it, we have got a call for you tonight. It is the Launch to Learn Solidarity in Action call. We're going to be going over this grant program. We're going to be going over how to apply, what it is, how it works, some of the ways that you can apply it and get involved. So we'll drop the link in the chat, but please sign up if you are curious about learning more about how do you stand with communities under threat and how do you use and work with Indivisible resources to do that. So that is action item 1. I'm going to re-up a couple of action items from last week. Folks, we are hearing feedback from people who are doing the Signs for Solidarity canvassing efforts. This is the effort to get local businesses in your town to post a sign that says, no kings, no ICE, no fear, immigrants are welcome here, or a couple of other messages along similar lines to both make really clear and that we are publicly defying and opposing ICE, and to really tangibly educate business owners on their own rights to refuse to cooperate when ICE is showing up on their premises. We're hearing from people. We'll talk about this some during the call, but I've heard from some folks who've been spreading the word and getting some really interesting responses all over the country, but we really want folks to organize and to get these out as far and wide as possible. So sign up there if you have not already. Blue state indivisibles, we are continuing to call on state Democrats to fight fire with fire when it comes to these new congressional maps. Texas has moved this horrifying new partisan redistricting. They are very clearly trying to redistrict Donald Trump into a midterm majority, even though they know that he is obviously on track to lose in the midterm elections because everybody hates what he is doing. We cannot let that happen. So we've got to push our blue states to fight back. So we've got a call script for you there. Redistricting coup is underway. We got to push those folks to fight back. And then finally, join our campaign on Avelo Airlines. Avelo Airlines, I know there are some folks on this call who know a lot about this because you have been driving this work the entire year. This is a commercial airline that is doing deportation flights for the Trump administration. And we want to make them pull back from supporting Donald Trump and his deportation agenda. So if you're an individual, you can sign up to boycott. You can contact them, contact some of their stakeholders, business partners, et cetera. I know there are Indivisible groups that are actively protesting on this front. Ezra, can I hand it over to you to talk about the Indivisible win of the week?
There was it. So we highlighted this in the newsletter, and I'm actually curious. So every week I write and Leah helps write the newsletter that we put out on Mondays, and then there are a whole bunch of action items, and we're trying to re-up them here. I'm curious how many of y'all see those newsletters and if those are useful. That is kind of where we try to say, here's the big news of the week. Here's what we want to make sure everybody is aware is happening. And then here are the things that we know you can do. I did see a lot of people were playing up our monologues, and I wasn't looking for compliments there, but I do appreciate it. That's very sweet of everybody. We do try to do a balance of here's our take of things and here's what you can do. Okay, great to see that there's a lot of
Really
folks
like the
seeing the
newsletter.
newsletter. Okay,
Yep.
good,
Okay.
good, good,
Cool.
good. So that is good to see. We're playing around with the team, just a peek behind the curtain for y'all, of like how can we build in more feedback there? How can we build in more input? Because I want to provide information that's useful, Leah, and I don't want to just produce stuff for the sake of producing it, but it's good to get regular, hey, you could go in this direction, or this was particularly useful, or this landed. So we're working on that, but it's good to hear from y'all that people are seeing it. But Leah, to your point, the Indivisible win of the week, we highlighted this in the newsletter, but there were more than 200 activists out at Traverse City Indivisible, and is it Leland now Indivisible? This is all at the Cherry Capital Airport in Michigan, and they were specifically protesting Ice Air, Avello Airlines, and the $150 million contract that they have to run these deportation fights. So it was an incredible showing. It looked very powerful. It looked like the community coming together. It looked like exactly what we want this to look like in communities around the country. So congrats to Traverse Indivisible and Leland now Indivisible. And apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong, in which case I'll correct myself next week. But we're seeing these kinds of protests start to take shape all over the country. And this is the kind of thing that a business like Avello Airlines is not used to. They are not equipped to take in this kind of consumer activist pressure. They're not elected officials. They're not used to going to town halls and having like to hear from their constituents. To have organized pressure in this way is unique and makes them scared that this is going to hurt their operations and their ability to continue doing it without being noticed by the rest of the population. And so this feeds into the whole theory of change. You apply this kind of localized pressure and you do it all over the country, and it ladders up to actual change behavior by these folks who would otherwise collaborate with the administration. So again, congrats to the Indivisibles there. We want to see more from other folks. Okay, so I covered this last week in brief. I'm going to cover it this week again because I do think it's going to be a major piece of political news for roughly the next month. It's not largely being covered right now, but Congress is coming back from recess next week after Labor Day. I hope everybody is planning to show up at a Labor Day protest near them on Monday. We certainly are. I hope to see y'all out there. But after Monday, Congress is back. We're back. And the big thing that they've got to get done in September is to fund the government. Now, y'all might recall that Schumer led the Democrats in Congress last spring in March to cave to Republican demands. That's what happened last March. And as a result of that, there was no government shutdown. The Republicans got what they wanted. And then we moved on because that piece of leverage was gone. Now, back then, the Democrats had said that they were planning to fight hard and they had a plan. And then the day came and they just kind of collapsed. Right now, we're about a month out from a government shutdown again. And what we hear from Dems, in leadership at least, is they're going to fight hard and they have a plan. But we don't have a plan yet. There is no public plan out there. So what we should be asking Dems, here's an indivisible strategic orientation. We need a demand. You can't enter a negotiation without a demand. You need a demand. What kind of demand is a good demand when you're facing a possible government shutdown? Well, one should be popular. You're playing for public approval. So you need to make a demand that you can rally around and say, that is something I like, even if I'm not a Democrat. Even if I'm a moderate Republican or an independent, I like that thing that are made. Two, it's got to be easy to explain. This cannot be, Dems love to get into policy details. We like to get really wonky and nerdy. I love that about us. But for the purpose of winning a public relations battle, this needs to be easy to explain. It needs to be really simple. It needs to be bumper sticker level so that if we're going to a shutdown, the Republicans understand, oh, they've got a really good ask that's popular and easy to explain. And this comes to the third ideal characteristic of a demand. It fractures the Republican coalition in some way. So it is popular, it is easy to explain, and it makes the Republicans squirm. They don't want to be on the other side of this ask. I want to call out positively Elizabeth Warren, who I believe last week came out swinging with exactly that kind of demand. She said, I am not going to vote for any funding bill unless they restore the Medicaid cuts. The Republicans slash Medicaid by a historic amount, one of the most deeply unpopular policy moves, a policy move that is unpopular even among Republicans. They slashed it in the big ugly bill. Warren says that's my line in the sand. Restore the Medicaid cuts, otherwise no funding. Now, I think that's great. I would also like to see something on the Epstein files personally. I would like to see something on rescissions because of the administration, or sorry, if the regime chooses to just go forward and not spend money that's appropriate, what good is a deal? But this basic argument that Warren is putting out there, I think is really smart and good and should be something we rally around. TBD, to be decided whether or not Democratic leadership takes this position, but I think it's a strong one. And this is the kind of approach that you'll see us rallying in the coming weeks. Leah, that's top level. We spent 20 minutes.
We did
so that's a fair
not. We
amount.
did not successfully get to Q&A earlier.
I was
so we're
thrown
gonna
out.
work on this.
Frankly, I was thrown off by all the love for the monologues in the chat. So I went a little bit long-winded. So I welcome additional feedback there. Should we get to Q&A, Leah?
Mhm.
Okay. So reminder, Q&A feature. Please put in questions. Please vote. Let us know if you're an Indivisible group leader. We'll call you out, get you some new recruits maybe. But the first one, Leah, is KC, who asks, can you speak to yesterday's CDC news and what next steps can be taken? Is there a way to secure vaccine access for citizens and or mitigate public health issues related to dangerous messaging? Gosh, this is a hot topic of conversation in our own family and at Indivisible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so this is unbelievably scary just for
Update
folks.
people,
Yeah, just for kind of a quick, I think we are all aware that the CDC is under extreme pressure and stress from RFK as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Yesterday, news broke that he had asked for the resignation of the CDC director, who has up until now said she is not resigning. Only the president can fire her. So stay tuned on that front. But then additionally, as many as 5 senior and highly respected CDC senior leaders resigned. There is one of those folks put out a resignation letter making really clear that they quite simply could not do their job to protect the American people under the conditions that were being created by RFK Jr. and MAGA fanatics. Politicizing and weaponizing the department in service of infectious diseases. They are on the pro-infectious diseases side. So it's incredibly scary. It is frightening for anybody as the parents of small children. It is like absolutely terrifying that we're just all heading into an era when like basic protections that we have taken for granted are no longer available to a lot of us. And so short answer is I wish I had like, here are the 5 things that you can do. Here's the ways in which, states can intervene. My immediate questions are around what can states do to step in here in terms of state regulations or state expectations around some of the protections that are being eviscerated at the federal level. Now, not everything obviously works there, right? So like the vaccine recommendation for COVID vaccine, for example, which I should pull in, that's a federal recommendation. And so it's not, or that's a federal parameter. And so I'm not sure that there's anything states can do, but I do think there's a set of questions around what can we do to ask our state leaders to supplement with additional protection where the federal government is failing. And then I think the other thing is just that we have a massive public communications challenge here. We need people to understand how incredibly dangerous this is and very fast before things go completely off the rails for public health. And well, things have already gone off the rails, but we need them to understand why it's happening. I'm going to just say something that blows my mind and will probably blow a lot of folks' minds. When you look at polling of the popularity of the members of the Trump cabinet, RFK Jr. currently polls way above everyone else. He is actually has the highest favorables of the Trump cabinet. And that to me says that we have this huge challenge because he has successfully branded himself in a decent amount of the public's eyes as kind of like an outsider challenging entrenched systems, challenging the pharmaceutical companies, et cetera, when the reality is that he is a dangerous crackpot whose ideas have gotten people killed and who's just an awful and profoundly irresponsible and lunatic human. We have not yet convinced people that that is the case, and we actually have to really affirmatively make clear what is happening in our own communications, because quite frankly, we just don't even have, we aren't where we need to be in terms of the public understanding of this matching the scale of the threat. So I guess what I would say here is that I think this is exactly the kind of thing that is really ripe for folks who have the ability to talk to neighbors, communicate within communities, do campaigns or public support services that kind of close that gap and communicate why this is happening. I wish we had and here's the toolkit right now. We do not have that, but it is a great question because this is incredibly personal to everyone on this call and anybody who cares about not getting infectious diseases.
Great question. Next question. Sarah asks, can we organize a mass mobilization to stand up against the National Guard and troops being deployed into Chicago? I've heard that it has worked in European nations. Can we organize this quickly to say, no, we don't want you in Chicago, etc. Otherwise, it will continue from blue city to city. I understand that it must be massive, peaceful mobilizations of individuals. And just to note, Trump himself has said, we plan to go, it's DC now, and we plan to go to, and then we've heard a whole list of cities. Maybe it's Chicago, maybe it's New York, maybe it's elsewhere. And they've got the money to do it now. We've talked about this for a while since the big ugly bill was moving through, that the $171 billion that they've given to their secret police force is now being used to terrorize cities, and they're just starting to turn on the spigots. So we can expect more of these militarizations to come. Here's what we should not do. And this is what, in part, the last newsletter was about. I think there is a visceral instinct by some members of the Democratic elite to say that is a quote unquote distraction. And we shouldn't focus on the militarizations of American cities. Instead, we should focus on name your economic kitchen table issue. It's Medicaid, it's inflation, it's jobs. And look, I'm a realist when it comes to political messaging. I don't think we should just choose a political message because it fits our ideological priors. We should figure out what convinces people, what is actually going to move people along. How are we going to actually win people over to our side so that we can win back power? I think that's important. And also, I do think there's a way that some Democratic elites come to their messaging, which is just ass backwards. Excuse my language. I actually, it occurs to me, I wrote that in the newsletter originally and Leah edited it out.
I did, but you got it back in.
But I got it back in. The way this works is you get some fancy polling firm, some message testing firm that comes in and poll tests a whole bunch of different messages. And they say, look, when you talk about Medicaid, that reaches the most number of people agree with that message. But the problem with coming to your messaging approach that way is that you're always going to be drawn to bland, generally accepted phrases and topics that isn't going to motivate anybody and isn't going to convince anybody. And it's going to make you come off sounding like you're a poll-tested robot. That's what it's going to feel like. We have a different approach here, which is we believe that the authoritarians are taking over, and we believe that you start a campaign to push back against the authoritarians, not with message testing. You start with an anti-authoritarian campaign plan in which you slot in your message testing and figure out, okay, what's the best way to talk about this so we pull people along? And time again over the last 8 months, that strategy has proven effective. The same Democratic polling elites who said, well, don't talk about Abrego Garcia. We shouldn't talk about immigration. That's bad for us. Don't talk about LA. Nobody wants to save LA. Who cares they sing out the National Guard? He looks strong. We should just talk about inflation right now. That is a stupid way to conduct politics in 2025 when an authoritarian is in the White House. The appropriate way is to identify what you are for, which is for democracy and the Constitution and human rights, and say, that is what we are fighting for. Let's talk to people about that. Do not just poll people generically and say, I guess Medicaid's popular. Let's just talk about that. People know the economy is bad. People know the job situation sucks. People know their Medicaid is under attack. You don't have to just campaign about that, but you do need to push your worldview to the population who does want to follow the pro-democracy side if you present it to them that way. And we have seen this with Abrego Garcia. We saw this with LA. We've seen this in DC, and we'll see it in Chicago, and we'll see it in New York. We need politicians and leaders coming out swinging on this. This is not a direct answer to your question, Sarah, which is, can we have a mobilization? And the answer is yes. And the second part of that answer is, we're going to announce something next week. So stay tuned, because I think the big mobilizing force behind No Kings 2 is going to be this militarization of American cities across the country. I think that's why a lot of people are going to come out in the same way that tons of people came out for No Kings, because LA, the explosion in LA that Trump was bringing, was just blowing up on the national scene. And a lot of people came out in their communities around the country to say, I don't want that. And we're going to see it again. So yes, Sarah, we will do it. It is coming soon.
I want to say what Ezra said one more time.
She'll say it better.
I think
No, it's better. Yeah.
No, because I think the really key thing is that I think there are two overarching theories of how we should handle the next how many months until midterms?
14 and a half,
Yeah.
15?
Two strategies. And one is like essentially we should be as like close to the median of where public opinion is on every possible issue for as much as possible, and like basically be setting up as much as possible for like the best possible midterm election. And if that's your strategy, like the way that you're doing it is you're message testing everything and you're saying the message that polls the best. Our strategy is we actually have to organize a massive grassroots resistance, defiance, opposition that's capable of pushing back and checking a regime that is obviously trying to consolidate power massively so that it can rig the rules in profound and fundamental ways that could, if unchecked, make the midterms almost entirely ceremonial in nature. And we actually have to like build that grassroots opposition, and we have to reach lots of people with that fundamental story of incredibly dangerous authoritarian overreach that directly threatens their life, their neighbors, their well-being. We actually, and in order to do that, we can't just like message test our way to that. Message testing is an input in the strategy. It is a part of the way that you can, it's the way that you like test whether things are resonating in order to move people to your desired outcome, which is understanding the world that we are in. Those are completely different things. So when somebody says, oh, this is how it tested, and that's where, that's why I'm saying this, where are we trying to go? Figure out where you're trying to go, and then figure out what helps people hear that story that you're telling and gets them there.
And I think this is a situation. Sorry, I know we're 2 questions in and 10 minutes in, and so we'll go faster. I see that.
If you want more answers on problems with polling, we are available for that.
The last thing I would say is this is likely going to come from you all. It's not going to just come from the politicians. There are exceptions. There are the Jamie Raskins and the Chris Van Hollens and the Maxwell Frosts. There are good fighters out there who lean this way. But a lot of what politicians are doing right now is trying to, they're sticking their finger into the wind, and they're trying to see where people are going. And this is why the next big mobilization, Labor Day, and then beyond that for No Kings too, are going to be really important for seeing that message. Okay, and we'll try to pick it up. I'm reading the chats too, so we'll try to pick it up.
We'll go faster.
Okay, moving on to Haru. Indivisible Sacramento. Hey, Indivisible Sacramento. How can we manage insurance needs for mass mobilizations in major metropolitan areas in our city? Any desirable location for mass mobilization requires a permit from a city, which requires insurance. We can't get an honest policy because insurance companies are not writing policies for events like this at any price. We are not willing to lie about the nature of the event because that leaves us all open to personal liability. The only alternative is getting a permit at the Capitol, but it isn't available for 10/18 because Iron Man is happening in Sacramento that day.
Yeah.
We know this is an issue. This has become an issue this year, and I think it's a great example of institutions obeying in advance and suddenly changing their behavior because they are worried they're going to suffer consequences if they are even seen as being connected in any way to opposition to this regime. So it is a real issue. It's not one that we faced in the first Trump administration, even. It is a new problem that we're facing with insurance companies being too scared to engage in any way. Leah?
Yeah, I mean, so the short answer is that we are aware of this problem. We are hearing directly from a number of folks around the country who are experiencing different versions of it. We've been trying to explore a bunch of alternatives, testing what works and rolling them out as we can in the context of the mass mobilizations. And so we're going to be really actively engaged on this as we prep for No Kings too. We know this is a problem that a lot of folks are facing, and we're taking it really seriously. I wish I had and here's the insurance company right now on the call, but what I can tell you is that we are all really clear that this is a major challenge for folks across the movement, and we're working on it.
Great. Rachel asks, with the next government funding battle coming up in September, what's the best way and when to pressure and support Democratic senators and representatives? 1, to have a plan to extract concessions, and which concessions from the GOP, despite worrying about being blamed for a possible shutdown. GOP has the majority after all. And 2, stand together no matter what. I covered a little bit of this in the intro, but I think a great opportunity are these Labor Day parades that you're going to see all over the country. You're going to see your elected officials, senators, and representatives out at these parades, which is great. They should be out at these events. They should be giving speeches. And this is a great time to say, hey, are you going to actually publicly express your demands? Even better, are you on board with Elizabeth Warren's line in the sand that the Medicaid cuts should be restored, otherwise no Democratic votes? I think where we are in the process right now, we just want to know what the Dems are going to fight for. We want to know what their plan is. It is a month away from shutdown. Tell us what to rally around. And the absence of telling us in one unified voice what to rally around, I'm on board with the Warren plan. That's the best idea publicly announced that I've seen coming from any elected Democrat in Congress. So I would ask them if you see them over Labor Day, and because they're going to be out doing photo ops. And if they are not yet out publicly, ask them to come out publicly and embrace the Warren plan. Or if they've got another brilliant plan, I'm all ears. But we need some leadership. We need it fast. Leah, anything on Rachel's question? Okay. Going over to Guy's question, is it time to try national collective economic boycott by doing a blackout the system minus the work stoppage? It's a training run for us, September 16th to 19th. Do you know blackout the system, Leah?
I haven't heard of it. We'll look into it. I guess what I would say is we're in a let a thousand flowers bloom stage right now where a lot of people need to try different campaigns. We need to see what we can catch. That is not what that's not like kind of our central focus for September. We've got a place where we're gonna dig in. But again, very supportive of people testing a bunch of things and seeing what can get traction across the grassroots.
Look at us zooming through questions.
Yeah,
okay,
go faster.
Sherry from Sonoma County Indivisible. What do you know about the group General Strike US? Okay, so we just kind of answered this.
Okay, great.
Great.
Wait, and then general strike. So, okay, so here's a general take that I have. I know that a lot of folks have signed up on general strike, and I want to kind of offer our like overall understanding of how mass disruption like general strikes fits within the overarching strategy, right? Because I think there's a contingent of people who are, on my blue sky, and anytime I say, hey, come to this call, they say, we need a general strike tomorrow. And we're in this like very uncomfortable position where anybody who is looking at how fast the US is descending into authoritarian consolidation is very reasonable in saying, like, why are we not all out in the streets right now? What is happening? That is an incredibly reasonable and rational emotion to have. And also, the ways that successful pro-democracy movements meaningfully exert power in relation to the system and in order to check democratic backsliding is you build up your power over time. You actually can't skip the steps like having the intro meeting to welcome in the new members and training people and having the mass mobilizations that bring in the next set of people, and then testing your muscles via various different tactics. So when we talk about the Ground to Velo campaign, when we talk about Signs for Solidarity, these are trying new tactics to try to move more people onto our side, visibly onto our side in the pro-democracy movement, to try to go at some of the enablers and to practice kind of working new muscles in an organized fashion as a movement. Those are preconditions for the kind of large-scale action like the general strike. They're not kind of like a distraction from it. They're actually the kinds of things that you would need to see in order to feel any confidence that bigger scale disruptive action is possible. Because when when you call for those things and they don't work out very well, mostly what you're doing is signaling weakness. So we've got to build, and I would encourage folks to understand, organizing to pressure your members of Congress, organizing for the mass mobilizations, participating in boycott campaigns, participating in sick-outs. Those are the kinds of things that are actually part of an organized effort to build a pro-democracy muscle.
Yep. Great. Daphne with Indivisible Albuquerque asks, science-based policy seems to get lost in the shuffle of more visible crises, from immigration raids, National Guard deployment to voter suppression, but the stakes are just as high, in my opinion. And the news this week has been especially alarming. SCOTUS's partial overturning the overturn to reinstate $783 billion in funding, for example. Is Indivisible doing or planning to do anything to collaborate with science advocacy groups to counter the growing wave of misinformation, from defunding mRNA vaccine or research to undermining autism studies and promoting ideas like wellness farms over SSRIs? These trends are a threat, threaten both public health and democratic resilience. Thoughts?
So
sorry, you were trying to stick
no, I was gonna give you. I just did the last one. So
no, you're fine. I think this is an insightful question, and it hits on something that's really tough, which is there are so many things that are bad right now, and some of the worst things are not flashy and high profile and don't create crowds. And how do you organize effectively when it comes to those things? Because a lot of what we talk about is how do we build a mass movement, and how do we build up this muscle so that we can effectively push forward against this regime. And we're looking for what are the issues that bring as many people as possible. And what that naturally does is, although we are 100% in alignment on the need to address other issues, it focuses our attention often on the flashier, bigger, more popular things that we know can pull more people in. So I respect the question. I think it hits on something pretty tricky, which is it is hard to push back against all of the damage being done right now. And some of the solutions that are going to come are not going to come until we're able to get power again. And where my mind goes for this is, like, if we survive this as a democracy, if we survive this as a democratic republic, and we find ourselves in a position of power, we cannot just go back to warmed over policy proposals from the Hillary campaign or the Kamala Harris campaign or from the first Biden administration. We need to be thinking in terms of reconstruction, in terms of what is a post-Civil War or post a post-World War II democracy look like. That justification for some sort of massive reconstruction of our society and democracy is there if we find ourselves in that position of power. And until then, it's going to be hard to make progress on a whole lot of fronts because we simply do not have power at the national level. It's not to say there aren't campaigns you can run at the local and state level, but uh, I don't want to act like that's the full solution. It's not. We need a strong national government that actually invests in the well-being of its people, and we don't have that now. And there's not a solution to getting that other than systematically rebuilding power so that we can actually make those reforms. So I feel that Leah, like, I'm kind of dancing around Daphne's point. I think it's a really good point, and it's not just science-based policy. There are a few
Yeah.
other issues that we're
Yeah.
somewhat quiet on, frankly, because we don't see a lot of immediate, if we do this, then this benefit will result.
Well, and it's often policy areas that are overwhelmingly at the discretion of the Trump regime, right?
Yeah.
Where we have an assessment not only that like we don't have much leverage, but they actively enjoy pissing us off.
Yeah.
And so campaigning directly at them on things, a lot, we approach that with like a lot of hesitation unless we have a clear theory of why something specific we can mitigate harm or we can actually move the needle in a meaningful way. Or we can campaign in external facing ways that reach more people on an issue that's personal to them that can pull them to our side. But that's not necessarily about actually getting real policy changes. It's about using things that are horrible in order to pull more people in.
That's
And
right.
I'll just say totally candidly, the experience of running a multi-issue organization during a period when just the scale and the scope and the variety of harm is so profound and across every possible thing we care about is honestly the experience of feeling like you are failing every possible issue at the same time, because there's like literally not enough, we don't have enough bandwidth in the email system to successfully raise the alert about everything that is happening. And it's just an incredibly painful thing to try to like make sense of the world, knowing that we're not doing justice to 100 tragedies at the same time. It really is.
Yep. That's a dark answer, but I think it's a real answer. Yeah. Okay, moving on to Karen's question. Karen, you've given valid reasons why organized mass demonstrations need to be carefully planned and organized to be effective. I get it. Still, a growing number of expert interviews I've heard, most recently Ezra Klein, the other Ezra, as we call him in our household, speaking with journalist Radley Balco, cite civil society mass protests, specifically June 14th Snow King Day, as one of the only remaining sources of optimism against this rapid rise of authoritarian takeover. I fear intimidation will become too great if 2 to 3 month stretches go by between events, so we don't lose momentum. Can we collapse the planning time between events? The rapid escalation, militarization in our cities isn't waiting for us to organize. Karen, I'll just be real with you. I agree, and I think No King's Day was a historic event, a historic success. 5 to 6 million people out in 2,200 communities in 27 countries. One of the largest single-day protests in American history. And it sent a clear message because Trump looked like such a clown with his pathetic little birthday party that day. So we owned the day. We funneled 300,000 people into strategic non-cooperation trainings through 1 Million Rising. And also, if I had it to do over again, I would have set the next mobilization day so that we could announce it on No King's Day. So we could have said after on No King's Day, here's what's coming next. Everybody knows it's coming next. Instead of there being this period between, I think you're right. I think the period between No King's Day and the next major national mobilization is too long, and this is part of our internal debrief of how we effectively take the momentum from one and build onto the next. this is not just me and Leah calling the shots, as you can imagine. There are like, it's not just Indivisible calling the shots. This is like a big coalition effort. But I agree with you. I think this is one of our big learnings coming out of No Kings 1, and it's something we're thinking about heading into the next. It's a live topic of conversation, and we want to correct that because we don't want multiple months passing between these. Because I agree with the analysis that there are basically two ways to fight back against the regime right now. One is people power, and the other is the courts, and the courts aren't going to hold forever.
I want to nuance that
Always.
answer with a couple of thoughts. The first is that in the chat, I am also seeing people saying, "Can't you give us more lead time between events to plan?" And I want to recognize that this is a partnership between us as organizations supporting these events and individuals who are on the ground, who are overwhelmingly volunteer coalitions of people who are putting their hearts and souls into organizing these mobilizations and who are just as wrung out at the end of, a No Kings as our team is. And it takes the recovery time is meaningful there, right? For everyone involved. And so I do think we've got to be thoughtful about the fact that, the way that these protests get put together is real humans put their lives on hold to make them happen for extended periods of time. And for us to do something like a No Kings, it's really like months of our staff being overwhelmingly focused there, right? So it's a big commitment. And I think that is also just about planned mobilizations versus about rapid response ones. The thing where I think we also need to get tighter is the ability to move into faster and more intensive rapid response in moments when something is happening. Because I think what you're talking about here specifically is the potential for kind of escalation to create a chilling climate that closes off the possibility of protest. Here's what I'll say to that. No Kings was bigger because Donald Trump was trying to crack down on protest in Los Angeles. More people came out because they saw that this was happening. And so I think we should understand this as a cycle where we need to make those repression attempts backfire, but not necessarily as this kind of like ratchet where their repression will automatically chill the next round of protest.
I'm very into the rapid response frame of like how you use that to build up energy in between major mobilizations. There are a lot of examples of institutions failing, and they happen, and it's a one-day news story or maybe a half of a day news story, and then everybody moves on. And a rapid response, even targeted campaign, even localized campaign by folks could do a lot of good. It's something the right wing does so good. The right wing will find some tiny little issue in some community somewhere, and then they just blow it up. They just blow it up to be a big national issue that's part of their national campaigning. And they're sophisticated when they do it. And we are slower. We are slower to move. Well, in any case, next week, stay tuned. We're going to have a big national mobilization coming up. Okay, moving on to Barbara's question. It seems no progress can really be made with misinformation freely promoted on Fox, Newsmax, etc. What actions can we contemplate to begin addressing the propaganda wing? Frankly, I'm less worried about Fox and Newsmax than I am about their investments in influencers and creators and the new emerging media ecosystem. I think Fox News, it's almost been outmoded practically. It's not this sinful repository propaganda for the right-wing regime. It's like they're the old fogies practically. They can't catch up to the wackos who are running the right-wing creator accounts. I think the right wing has just done an incredible job investing in new media infrastructure. We've talked a lot about on this, What's the Plan? And it's a place that we put a lot of new investment. Indivisible has. So we've developed an entire new media team. And Antonio Ariano, who came to us from NextGen, has a history in doing this, is building it up for us. We did a lot of this, not for hands off because we were so new to this work, but we did a lot of it for No Kings, and it was quite effective. We're going to do more of it. There was a recent story that was just cracked by Taylor Lorenz, who's a great journalist, about the new investments from the Democratic ecosystem, capital D, Democratic Party ecosystem into creators. It was covered as something of a scandal. Frankly, I think it's a good thing. I think the Dems should be paying creators. The Dems should be investing in influencers. The Dems should be investing in the new media ecosystem. That's what the right wing has been doing forever. So I think the only answer effectively to not just Fox News, but the entire right wing ecosystem is we need to invest in our own pro-democracy ecosystem. So this is why you see Leah and I doing interviews with The Contrarian or Anand Giridharadas' The Ink or Midas Touch. You see us doing a lot more work with these influencers and creators and new emerging media than we did, gosh, even 6 months ago. And it's because this is how we reach people where they are. Because normal people, I love everybody on this call. Most people are not joining a 3 p.m. Eastern time call on how to save democracy every Thursday. You all are on the forefront of this. If we want to reach people who aren't joining What's the Plan every single week, we need to reach out to where they are.
I agree with all that. I do just want to note, I think some of the challenges with that specific arrangement were around disclosure and kind of like being clear about the
I
relationship
agree.
and or restrictions on the ability of influencers to actually kind of freely engage in the political discourse. And I do think this is a broader challenge with democratic politics sometimes, where I mean, you see it with democratic politicians where you want everyone to like stay so tightly on message that they do not sound like they're actually able to have an independent and authentic brand. We need to invest in that set. We need to be able to support influencers. We also need them to be authentic voices because that's how they reach people who are not already with us.
Gary asks, can you please clarify your position regarding the need to plan now for a massive Chenoweth level? I think Erica Chenoweth.
3.5% style, yes.
3.5% style, nonviolent, civic, well-planned, targeted, managed, national civic uprising with de facto strikes. I'm just trying to summarize. So Leah, we've talked about this a little bit already on this call, but this basic idea of we're trying to get to 3.5%, and not just 3.5% of the population to show up for one day, but 3.5% of the population engaged in the act of pushing back against regime overreach. Like that's the Chenoweth style of organizing when we talk about 3.5%. Do you want to talk about like how do we get to where we are now to there? What is the strategic framework?
Yeah. Well, so I would refer back, I would say that the 1 Million Rising training course really is our position stretched out over three hours of training, which is that we are collectively quite good at protesting, right? Like we've got a lot of people across this movement who know how to throw together a local protest. And that is great. That is important. That is a key ingredient in pushing back against authoritarianism. And also, authoritarians are perfectly aware that most people disagree with what they are doing, right? The point of a protest is to be showing that there's broad disapproval. Donald Trump and Stephen Miller aren't, well, actually, I was gonna say they're not dummies. Stephen Miller's not a dummy. Donald Trump, they know that what they are doing right now is not popular. They understand that throwing the economy into chaos, obliterating the public health system, eviscerating the Department of Education, gutting Medicaid, tariffs, mass raids and deportations, the complete eradication of like the civil rights infrastructure in this country. They understand these things are not popular. That is why they are consolidating control. And so protest is good for reaching people who aren't already with us to say, come join us. We are collectively standing for the things you care about. But also building up our capacity for strategic non-cooperation is part of the next step, because that's actually how you chip away at the power sources within an authoritarian regime. And that's actually how you build up to bigger acts of strategic disruption that have meaningful impacts on the ability of that regime to consistently operate and to consolidate power. So that's when we talk about 3.5%, we're talking about how do we actually exert pressure and leverage in order to push the power centers within society that are currently enabling the regime, right? Business, higher education, like the security services, other parts of the federal government, state and local governments. How do we push all of those entities to stop enabling the administration, to stop complying with it, and onto the field into the fight for democracy? And that is where the 3.5% comes from, because you organize people in campaigns that are necessary to do that work. It's not like, let's all get 11 million people out on the same day and like take a big photo and then we've done it. It's actually, we get those people. Oh, I knocked over our microphone. We get those people engaged in that work collectively of pressuring the regimes, the power centers, and that is how you actually meaningfully shift power in this country.
And Leah, would you agree, like, that one of the best opportunities to do that is not simply calling for some kind of event, although we do that at times, but is to respond to the unpopular overreach of the regime.
Yeah.
So like I think of the occupation of cities, the terrorizing of immigrant communities. These are things the regime is doing because they're bullies and they're authoritarians. And it excites their base. Their base loves it because it shows them being strong. It is deeply unpopular. It is really unpopular. So as Trump takes over cities, as he sends National Guard troops in, as he sends secret police around, it is on us to make that a political event, to make that an organizing event, to wake up people who up until this point think politics is not worth getting engaged in. It doesn't affect their lives, and make them see, no, your rights are under attack now. It's either we stand up now or he's in your city next. But we've got to take advantage of those moments. And so this feeds into both the next major national mobilization, which I think will largely feature on the occupation of American cities, but it also speaks to the need for rapid response. When the Michigan university system suddenly announces that they're not going to provide care to trans students, that can't be a one-day story. That can't just be something that appears in the local press and then everybody moves on. There needs to be a rapid pushback of Michigan alums, of people in the community, of folks showing up in solidarity to extract as much organizing potential out of that overreach, out of that bullying that we can possibly get. Because if we don't react, then other universities, other institutions will see that and say, oh, we should just cave too. It's just easier if we cave because there's not going to be much blowback, and then we'll probably not be targeted by this administration. That's a dangerous outcome for us. We need there to be consequences from folks buckling, which means a combination of these big national mobilization moments and being there in your community ready to respond quickly. Okay, moving on to Carol's question. Oh, wait, sorry, no, Laura's question. What can mayors and governors do preemptively to prevent Trump from sending military troops to blue cities and states? They should be doing something now, not just waiting to react when federal troops are in their cities. If governors are the commanders in chief of their National Guard, can they call them out in advance to protect their cities and states?
So I guess what I would say there is, I think the biggest thing that everyone can collectively be doing is making clear that this is unnecessary, unwelcome, and just straight up crazy, right? Like, and this has been, again, the challenge that we're experiencing with a lot of the Democratic infrastructure is they're looking at this issue and they're saying, oh, Trump is making a targeted attack on black mayors. Trump is linking this to crime. Democrats pull poorly on crime. We should just stay as far away from this as possible. Whenever we talk about it, what we're going to say is Trump's just trying to distract from tariffs, as opposed to we actually need to go on the offensive in this moment, because wherever people pull on crime, what they don't actually like is the deployment of the military into American cities for potential use on Americans. People don't like that. There is a bunch of polling at this point. I mean, I can't believe I have to refer to the polling to dispute the polling, but there is a bunch of polling on this where, it's actually driving Trump's approval ratings lower that he's doing this. It's driving Trump is now underwater on crime, according to the most recent set of polling, because and on immigration, because he has been deploying these massively heavy-handed militarized tactics. And so one thing that I think we should be doing is just collectively, as an ecosystem, going on the offense and expecting our Democratic mayors, governors, federal officials to just be hair on fire mad about this. So that's one thing. And I think it's worth noting, actually, just specifically when we talk about Chicago, part of the reporting that we have heard is that Trump was potentially earlier to put or planning to put a kind of the deployment into Chicago in action earlier, and the coordinated, organized pushback of Governor Pritzker, basically every elected official in Illinois, everybody in Chicago, all saying, nobody wants this. This is totally unnecessary. This is an insane thing to do. This is a massive federal overreach into our affairs, might have held that back a little bit. And so there's a real big difference between a situation where the elected officials are kind of lukewarm, or even in the case of Mayor Bowser, actively thanking Donald Trump for being there, and where the elected officials are out there being like, what the hell? None of my constituents want this. This makes people feel less safe. What are you doing? This is an insane use of federal troops. That is going to completely change the narrative, and it's going to make them more hesitant to do this.
And there are Democratic leaders who are doing this. We've seen J.B. Pritzker come up in the comments a lot. I mean, gives J.B. Pritzker some credit. He did not wait for the polls to come in. Basically, a week after the election, he was in the fight back faction of the party. He was out there leading, giving speeches, saying, I'm not going to just take this. We're going to fight back. And we need people like him, people who came into the faction, the fight back faction from the get-go. We also need craven politicians who just follow the crowds wherever they go to follow us into the fight back faction. I want craven politicians on our side too. I think many politicians are craving. That is what makes politicians tick off it often. They will find out where is the public and they will go there. It is on us to say, there is political opportunity for you if you are willing to fight back, and there are political consequences for you if you refuse to fight back. That is okay, and I welcome them in. We're not keeping a list of the bad folks and the good folks, and they're always on the bad list. If you come to the fight back faction now, welcome. You are a member of the team. Happy to have you. And we should be encouraging them over, but we shouldn't be just praising all Dems because they got a D next to their name. So when Muriel Bowser goes and gives a speech to the occupying force, thanking them for occupying their city, you should say, that's screwed up. That is not the Democratic Party that I believe in. We need people to fight back, and we should find mayors who are actually willing to fight for the city. And in contrast, if you have somebody like the mayor of Boston, Mayor Wu,
Yeah, Michelle Wu.
Michelle Wu, who is actually out there fighting the fight. When you have somebody like J.B. Pritzker actually out there fighting the fight, we should be praising them because other politicians are watching the response to them. They're all looking, trying to figure out where can I get the support, and we want them coming over to our side. So if you happen to have a great great mayor or a great governor who's out there throwing the gauntlet down, go in and show that they've got support. And if you've got somebody like a Muriel Bowser, you got to show there are consequences. And that's going to be seen not just by Bowser, it's going to be seen by other politicians trying to judge how they respond in the moment.
That's right. Okay. Got one more to do.
Oh, okay. What can I do as a leader to help people who fear getting involved? Since this is a great question to end on, actually, from Carol. Since Musk left big balls in charge of the federal data, will we be targeted?
Yeah. So here's what I'll start, and then Ezra, you offer some thoughts. I think none of us really want to confidently predict what will or will not happen in terms of how an out of control authoritarian regime might attempt to respond to dissidents or might use people's data. What we've seen pretty consistently is that these are folks who will cross a lot of lines in order to consolidate power and in order to repress dissent. So I don't want to tell anyone that there are no risks associated with organizing in this moment. What I do think we all have to wrap our heads around is that there is no risk-free path when an authoritarian consolidates power so that they can implement a terrifyingly regressive right-wing white supremacist cultural grievance austerity agenda. There's no path that does not involve risk for us and our families and our neighbors and our kids. We have choices about whether we take some of those risks on up front and we organize together and we show up in the kind of numbers that make retaliation impossible, or whether we experience those risks on the back end after they've consolidated power, after they've fully gutted the systems that we rely on to live good and dignified lives, after they have taken away all of our rights, after they have removed our right to vote and our freedom of expression and our First Amendment rights. Those are the choices that we have. And, that might not be how exactly I would communicate it to the person who I'm trying to get on board for the simplest action, but that's the actual moment that we are facing, right? We have choices about how we move together. If we organize collectively, there are so many of us that they will not be able to successfully repress us, or we can all kind of stand alone and go back into our houses and stay atomized and individualized and wait for them to implement their agenda. That's the path. Now, on a practical level, I would invite that person to a very low level ask and just try to get them involved in some way. Would they wear a button? Would they, come to a meeting? Would they join a Zoom call? Would they take notes at something? Ask them for things that feel small. Would they, provide some food for an upcoming meeting? Ask them for something that's small and doesn't require a major commitment, and feel it out from there and see if people can get involved. One of the big things that I think is important about shared symbols, about shared identity, is that once people have kind of taken a very small step in of saying, yes, I'm part of this thing, they tend to want to do more. They tend to be more open to bigger asks over time. And so figure out that very first step of trying to get them feeling like they're part of this, and then go from there.
I think on that practical note, this is, again, not to not just to keep on bringing this up, but this is why we believe in the power of local group organizing. It is a lot of weight to take on to say there is an authoritarian breakthrough moment and your rights are under attack and you've got to do something. That's a lot for any individual person. It's pretty heavy stuff. It's pretty overwhelming. I think one of the power of groups is it's a lot of folks coming together because they have a shared view of the world and they have a shared commitment to doing something about it. That's it. That's it. And so when you get somebody through the door to your group, what I would highly encourage all y'all to do is to make it as welcoming and fun and empowering as possible. So the best groups are ones that actively try to recruit new people, who make the meetings to the point and empowering, so folks know that when they're taking actions, it's not just for the purpose of virtue signaling. It's not just for making clear that they're on the right side of history. It's because they are doing something that's meaningful. So when we talk about developing tactics and strategies, we look for things that are actually useful to do, and we try not to do top down things that'll just be the same everywhere, because that's not going to be useful to do everywhere. It's a big reason why we treat this movement as a grassroots up movement, because Lee and I are not going to know what you should do in rural Arkansas or what you should do in San Francisco or what you should do in a blue city center or a red rural area. You're going to be the best judge of that, and your group together, if it creates a welcoming environment, is going to be strategic. You're smart. You're paying attention to the news. You know what your politicians are up to. You know what the institutions are in your community. Coming together and owning the thing together and sharing that ownership with other folks is a great way to empower them and make them feel that they're not just victims of world events of this would-be authoritarian and coming at them, but they're part of a community together that's doing a thing that's real together. And when we're at our best, when Indivisible National is our best, what we're doing is we're providing those tools to local groups so that you can run the thing, so that you can own the thing, so that you can actually bring people in and they can be part of this movement for democracy. And it's at times like Hands Off or No King's Day or the Avella protest or Signs for Solidarity that I think we really capture that.
Yeah.
And we're able to break through and change the national conversation. I know that that's almost adjacent to this fear question, but I will tell you, if you get people in the door, if you get them to stop doom scrolling and stop just acting as individuals, but start acting as a community, you bust through that fear. It's almost not even a conscious thing. It's that by virtue of gathering together and focusing on a plan, an actionable plan, the fear is almost just in the background. It's like, oh yeah, that's something we're all dealing with, but we got a plan and we're working a plan. And I know, despite everything that's going on, this is how I put one foot in front of the other. This is how I contribute. So this is why we're so practical. I think the practical brings sanity. It brings reassurance. It at least tells us here is what we can do in this moment. That if you ever read Indivisible Resources, you will see we try to drive towards those actions. And this is a great segue now that we're 7 minutes over to remind you what those actions are this week. So Leah, the actions are.
Okay. All right. Just a reminder, Thursday. Oh, today's Thursday. Tonight, Solidarity in Action launched, Learn to Launch call, talking about our mutual aid grants program. So if you're a group leader, if you are doing Solidarity Action, you think you might be interested, join that call to learn more. I'm seeing a lot of messages in the chat noting that the changing of the light is causing us to appear like we are being beamed up into the distance. So we're going to get off pretty fast.
That's the light coming in through the windows.
So really fast, Signs of Solidarity. If you have not signed up, we've got the links in the chat. We'll send them out. Figure out how you can get involved. Ground Avelo. And fighting the redistricting takeover. We've got all these links in the chat.
Labor Day.
And Labor Day. Oh my gosh.
Labor Day.
Oh my God.
We're not forgetting Labor Day. Showing up in solidarity on Monday. See you out there. Are going to be events all over the country. We're following the lead of our brothers and sisters in the union movement. So show up in support of a worker near you.
All right.
Until then, that was the plan, Leah, right?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. We will see you for What's the Plan next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And I think at that time, we'll have a big old mobilization that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. And also we will have shade.
We will have shade and maybe
to be becoming angelically disappearing into the distance.
And fingers crossed, maybe we'll even get a full night's sleep before then.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
See y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.